And now, the worldwide phenomenon. One records in Stowmarket, the other records in Houston. Alex Moss, Burton DeWitt join forces to bring you the weekly Dartscast 180.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast, sponsored by Dartwolf. I'm Alex Moss, back from my break and pleased to be joined once again by Darts statistician, my co-host Burton DeWitt. How are you doing, sir?
I don't even recognize your voice anymore. It's been so long. I'm doing just fine. How are you, Alex?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you. Yes, strange that you're talking to someone not with an American accent this week. But yeah, I'm doing okay, thank you. And glad to be back after a few weeks off. We've got a lot to get to, a lot to review from the weekend, a lot to look forward to this weekend and into the start of next week. We'll have 3 guests on the show as well to bring you, but we have to start this week's show on a sad note. And that is with the passing of Sean Greatbatch, a player that will go down in the history books in darts, the first player to throw a 9-darter on live television at the 2002 Dutch Open. And I had the pleasure of chatting to Sean a few times over the years since he stopped playing darts. And he was just a top bloke, and thoughts with his friends and family at this time. And we're already seeing the tributes come through for him as well. But Burton, I'm sure you'd agree with what I've just said there as well.
Absolutely. Sympathies, of course, his family already going through the death of his mother, who was a very accomplished darter in her own right just a few weeks ago. Sean, of course, is a huge loss to the darting community. One of the most iconic moments in Lakeside history was when he got after his last match at Lakeside, when he was first battling cancer, having the entire field of the other 31 competitors line up. Even some players who had already been knocked out of the tournament stuck around to line up to shake his hand as he walked off the stage. And the fact that he's survived another 13 years after that shows you just how much of a fighter he was, both on the hockey and off of it. And our sympathies to his entire family and friends.
Definitely, yeah. Our thoughts go out to the Greatbatch family, and it is the Dutch Open this weekend, as we were just discussing off air, the event which did make his name 20 years after he hit that 9-darter. The Dutch Open returns this weekend after a couple of years away due to the pandemic. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of glasses raised to Sean this weekend. There'll be some tributes as well. So we're sending our condolences to the Greatbatch family. We'll get into the rest of the show, and we'll start off with the US Darts Masters. This was the big event that took place over the weekend, and Michael Smith, his hot run continues, wins the title at Madison Square Garden. I guess more importantly as well, he is now the new FDI number 1 in the FDI rankings. But would you now be surprised if he doesn't end the year with that first major title?
I think I would be. I mean, he should have one already. Well, let me rephrase that. He only has himself to blame for him not having one already, because after starting very strong in the final of the UK Open against Danny Noppert, he let Noppy back in the match and couldn't hit at the right times in that match. He only has himself to blame for having not gotten over the line in that, as opposed to the World Final, where he only has Peter Wright to blame, because Peter Wright played some ungodly stuff in the last 10 legs of that match through almost no wrongdoing of Michael Smith. But at this point, Michael Smith is the best, or one of the very best players in the world, not just this past weekend, but for the past couple months now. And it's only because of a little bit of misfortune during the first few weeks of the Premier League season and the middle weeks as well, that he's not in the Premier League semifinals. If he was, he would be the favorite or one of the favorites heading into that. He is the favorite or one of the favorites heading into the World Match Play, at least as things stand. Obviously, a lot can change in 6 weeks. A lot has changed in the last 6 weeks already. If we went back 6 weeks ago, we probably wouldn't have been saying Michael Smith was the favorite for the World Match Play. We would have said that he had every chance, but we would not have said he was the favorite. We would have said, well, Michael Van Geren's coming back into form. Gurin Price is starting to look like himself as he gets back out of injury. And obviously Johnny Clayton, Peter Wright would have been right there as well. And a few other people who we would have said were right there in that same breath. Right now, it's Michael Smith and Johnny Clayton who are clearly the two best, or at least most consistently best players, with Michael Van Geren right behind them, I think, in that conversation. It's a 3-way race at the top of the darting landscape, and there's no reason to think Michael Smith is going to regress anytime soon. He definitely had a little bit of a lull, probably from the disappointment of giving away the UK Open title a few months ago, but he's bounced back and then some, and he's added more consistency to his game. They've almost every week in the Premier League, someone was saying if he hits his doubles, he doesn't lose. He hits his doubles now. He very rarely misses clumps of doubles like he used to a few years ago, or even in some parts earlier this year. And his scoring is almost as good, if not as good as ever. That's why he set a record a few weeks ago for the most 180s in a Euro Tour event. That's why every tournament he's in, he's a threat to break the 180 record. But his overall game is just so good right now. And I think his confidence is finally matching his skill level that he should win a title this year, a major title this year. And I would be surprised if he didn't. I said at the start of the year that I thought he would win 2 this year. There still is plenty of time in the way he's playing right now. That wouldn't surprise me. It would surprise me more if he didn't win any than if he won 2 from here. So yeah, I would say I'd be surprised if he doesn't win a title, a major title sometime this year. I'd almost say I'd be surprised if he didn't win 2.
Yeah, I don't think I can argue with that. And it's a great point that you make there about the Premier League as well, because we are going to be talking about the Premier League playoffs later, which will be happening on Monday next week. And Michael Smith, as you say, we said it quite a few times during the season when we were making our picks at how unfortunate he was during the season. And maybe if he'd have just found the results on the stage, that form, that red hot form that we've seen the last couple of weeks in terms of results, he could have been in the playoffs next week. And it maybe could have hinged on maybe 1 or 2 results in the penultimate week. I think back to the 0-2 and he lost out to Johnny Clayton in the semi-finals. If he'd have won that game and then beaten Joe Cullen in the final, I think that might have just been the difference. I don't know about the goal differential, but they might have been on similar points at that point. So, yeah, I think we can look back and say that Michael Smith, if he had got in the Premier League playoffs, he would have been right in contention to get that first major as early as next week. But he will have a little while to wait. That the World Match Play is the best part of 2 months away. But if he can keep this form going, then there's no reason to suggest he can't break that duck. And he's looking so likely at the moment. The run that he's on the last couple of weeks, winning that final night of the Premier League, then winning the European Tour event in Holland, then winning the US Masters. And I was just looking at the run that he had on the final day in New York, and 3 games, 33 140s, 14 180s. And these are against players that are in that elite caliber. You've got Gary Anderson, Peter Wright and Michael van Gerwen. And I want to touch really on those last couple of games, because the record that Michael Smith has against Peter Wright in knockout games on TV was played 14, lost 14 heading into that game. And he came out an 8-6 winner in that one. And the way he did it as well was very impressive. Broke in 11 darts to go 6-5 up, held throw to go 7-5 up, and then held throw in the 14th leg to win 8-6. So he really didn't give Peter Wright much of a chance in the end of that game. So to get through that one, beat the world number 1 and the world champion in a game which I don't think either of them will be too happy with how they played. They both averaged in the low 90s, but Michael Smith managed to find that burst at the right time to get over the line. And he did exactly the same in the final as well. He was 4-3 down against MVG in the break, comes out for the final session, 14-15, 14, 14-12 to win it. So 5 legs in a row, 108, almost 109 average. And they're spells that we've said on the show that have happened against him. The World Championship final from Peter Wright, the Grand Slam semi-final against the same player at the end of last year. And those are 2 occasions where a lot of people were thinking, this is it. This is the time for Michael Smith to get that first major. And you look at his CV now as well. I think you look at players that haven't won a major in the PDC, the best players in that list. I think Michael Smith's probably at the top now. He's got 18 titles, senior titles in the PDC. He's got that World Youth title in the PDC as well. That the major is the only thing missing still. And he's got 2 World Series titles. But as much as Rod Harrington called this a major event, I don't think Michael Smith will class it as that. He'll want to get that first major under his belt, and the confidence, the belief that winning a World Series event in front of a big crowd like we had at Madison Square Garden is only going to help him. So, yeah, he's just got to keep this run going if he can for the World Match Play or any of the other TV events at the end of the year. And I think we will see him pick that first major title up this year.
Now, after a long wait, the PDC finally makes its debut in New York and first event in the U.S. in 3 years. How do you feel, though, the event at MSG went overall?
Well, I think it went all right. And this is probably a better question for you as someone that does live in the US. So I can only really go off the bits that I saw on social media, online, and of course watching it at home on TV as a fan, and the reaction afterwards as well. But we look at what's already been said afterwards, and I think it was around 7,000 tickets sold across the 3 sessions, the first round session of the US Masters, the North American Championship, which we saw come back after 3 years, and then the final session of the US Masters. So that's a pretty good turnout, I think, for fans coming to this, which was a first event in New York for the PDC. And we had on the show last week Barry Hearn, the PDC president, Peter Cetera, who's in charge of the CDC over in North America, and that they were both quite optimistic about how the event was going to go down. And Matt Porter afterwards, the PDC chief exec, he said unquestionably it's the most successful event they've ever put on in America. So that bodes pretty well, doesn't it, for the future? And the PDC have already come out in the few days since the event, and they've said that the US Darts Masters 2023 is going to be back at Madison Square Garden June 2023. So that is a very good sign, I think. And just based on the performances that we saw from the North American players as well, okay, we only saw one of them go through in the end, Lender Gates beating Fallon Sherrick, but for the most part they all played pretty well in that first round. Okay, we didn't see any monster averages. I think there was a stat doing the rounds that this is the first World Series event where we haven't seen a 100+ average. We got close a few times, but you look at all the American players, the Canadian players, and they all gave a pretty good showing in their matches. We had 3 of the matches go 6-4, and they could have gone either way. A few of the other games as well, where the players really did perform pretty well. And we know that for a lot of them as well, they can play better. And to have 8 players there from North America go up against those top PDC players and put in a good showing overall, I think it does bode well. And I think going forward, we're going to see this event back next year. I know there's talk already from fans. They want to see a bigger event in America next year, maybe a 32-player event. I think it's probably a little bit too early for that. I think you've got to test the market out, and this was a new market that the PDC have tested out, and it has gone down well. But I don't think you want to push it too much too soon. And we think back to the years where we had the Las Vegas Desert Classic. That was I think a 5-day event, 6-day event, and the crowds weren't as big. These were events that were held in a time more suited to the UK market. This event was held for a more suitable time for the US market. So that goes to show as well that the PDC, they're not just catering for the UK market. They want to try and dig into this American market. And I think for a weekend, for an event, first one, we had to wait a long time for it to happen. I think the PDC, the CDC, they can only come away feeling quite positive about how they're going to crack the North American market going forward.
Yeah, I think what you said there about the fact that the majority of that this event was catered to the U.S. market is the key point there. Where as opposed to events in Vegas, the majority of the crowd were Americans and maybe some Canadians who are darts fans who came from wherever they live in the US or Canada to go to this event. When you go back to Vegas, and if you look just on the PDC website and leading up to the event in Vegas, it was all about selling tickets and holiday packages to Brits and other Europeans who wanted to, it was an excuse to go to Vegas for a week, or at least a weekend, if not a full week. And, you can also go watch some darts while you're there as well. This was an event that was catered to the U.S., but the counterpoint to that is it could have been catered better. And I say that with a couple of points that I want to make. One, what time did the final start? The final started at just a few minutes before midnight Eastern time on a Saturday night. If you were at the event, that's great. But if you weren't at the event, are you really staying up and watching an event on a Saturday night at almost midnight? Probably not. I went to bed long before that. Granted, I've been battling allergies all week, so I was extremely tired. But I was certainly not staying up till midnight to watch the final of this event. Obviously, people on the West Coast, it was a little more manageable. It was 9 o'clock. But if the goal is to grow the event in the U.S., having it on at a time where people will want to watch it is certainly a better idea than having it on at a time when no one is going to go out of their way to watch it if they even know what's going on. And that brings me to the second point. Where was the U.S. media presence in this? If you do a search for the U.S. Darts Masters on Google News, you find a decent number of British news sources, a lot of darts news sources, including the PDC website and Darts News and a few others. And you find one article in the New York Times, which is arguably the U.S. newspaper of record. And that is a good media to crack. But really, the article ended up being entirely about Fallon Sherrick. And, there's this event going on as well, but more about Fallon Sherrick. So this event did not end up making a big media splash, or really any media splash in the U.S. And that is a little bit of a cause for concern because it's supposed to be about growing it. In the end, you ended up with a tournament that gave the U.S. fans something they wanted, and that is a good thing, and that is something that should be celebrated, and that is something that the PDC and the CDC deserve a round of applause for making this event for the U.S. and Canadian fans. But I don't see how it really accomplished the goal of growing the sport when it didn't crack the media. It was, I don't even know if it was on television. If it was probably on DAZN. It was certainly not on any channel that I receive. And it just didn't make it into the newspapers. It didn't make it anywhere in the media. And even if the PDC had to buy media coverage, I think that would have been worthwhile if the goal is to grow the sport. So it's a mixed bag for me. I think the quality of the event was great, and the fact that they gave something to the fans was great. But the goal is to grow the sport, and I am questioning whether that is happening.
And now we'll move on to our first guest on this week's show. He is the newly crowned World Seniors Masters champion. Here's our chat with David Cameron. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the newly crowned World Seniors Masters champion, David Cameron. Thanks for the time, David. How are you doing?
Good, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Yeah, doing great.
Thanks for coming on. And it's been a whirlwind last couple of weeks for you, winning that title at Lakeside and then this past weekend playing at Madison Square Garden in the US Darts Masters. How do you reflect on the last fortnight?
It's still sinking in, I guess you can say, in a sense. It's been pretty hectic stuff and traveling back. But overall, I mean, it's amazing. I will say, it's just incredible.
I'm going to get on to the last few weeks later, but let's rewind back. You discovered darts as a youngster from your dad, but it wasn't until your mid-20s you started playing more competitively. Did you play any other sports growing up at all?
I was into baseball growing up and just basically road hockey and stuff like that. But that was pretty much it. But Little League, I guess you can say, it was my thing at the time. And a little bit of basketball, a little bit of golf, I guess. I kind of, messed around with everything there a little bit. So.
And then the darts comes back into your life as a young adult. You join a local league. What got you into going out playing darts every week? And then I guess after that, entering tournaments and progressing from there?
Yeah, well, I know years ago my brother took me to a tournament, and it was just an incredible feeling. And I was like, wow, this is cool. We only paid like $5 to play. Anyway, so I ended up going forward. I played in a league and stuff like that, and just one thing led to another. And guy said, try your regionals. I didn't know anything about it. Went and did that. Went through that for a couple of years. And your provincials, try to make your provincial team to represent your province at nationals. Finally broke through and did that. And ever since that, my first year, it's just been going everywhere that I can. And it's like you develop a fever for it, I think. And like I said, I'm pretty competitive anyway. But yeah, it's been amazing.
Not long after that, we see you make the trip over to the UK to play in the World Masters. I think one of the first times was 1998 when it was held at Lakeside. What are your memories of those first trips crossing the pond to play the game?
I'm at our nationals and the top four in the singles got to go and stuff like that. And it was like, I was just totally excited there. I think I ended up top four, but, I was just amazed. I said, if I ever make England once, I'll be happy. And then it just kind of went on from there. But yeah, I mean, Lakeside at the time, I was playing good. I thought I was anyway. But I think I ran into Les Wallace my first round. He ended up winning it that year, as far as I know. But it was a great time, great experience. Yeah, just kept on going.
And so you're progressing through the ranks back home. You're making those trips to the UK to play in a few of the World Masters. When did you start to get the idea or pursue the idea of trying to get back to Lakeside, but this time to play in the BDO World Championship?
I've been keeping an eye on things because they finally opened the door there quite a few years back to let the number one ranked player in Canada have a shot at it. So, I kind of chased all the tournaments, the BDO, enough to make sure that I had enough points to get there and give it a go. And I had some unlucky draws, I guess you can say, if you want, it just didn't break through at times. A couple times I broke through pretty good and I had some good opportunities, but, it is what it is and you have to accept it.
And it's 2014, you make that debut in the BDO World Championship, get in as one of those regional qualifiers, a spot in the preliminary round, and out of the hat, you come out with Martin Adams, 3-time world champion. What was that experience like, playing your first world championship and against a legend like Wolfie?
Well, I mean, I heard he was coming back and stuff, and I didn't know how, if he was going to be on his game or not. But, I think I was a little relaxed. I think maybe too relaxed when I played him, from what I can remember, I guess. But I was happy to be there and be on the stage, and it was a great time. I will say that for sure. So.
And you become a regular in the BDO World Championship after that. You played in 7 of them up until the very last one at the O2 in 2020. Looking back at your run there, you obviously had your first win in 2017. You picked up a few wins in 2019 and you came very close to the quarterfinals. What did it mean to have that good run right at the end there, getting very close to the quarterfinals?
Oh, I mean, it's every time that you go there, you hope you're going to do well, and unfortunately there can only be one winner. But yeah, I went in there that year, and I ended up playing Andy Hamilton, of course, and he was supposed to beat me. He was the favorite at the time, and I just felt in a good mood that day, I guess. And I just went and played the game, and I was good enough to beat him. And then Gary Robson, I think he was ranked 7th at that time, if I'm not mistaken, and he was my next opponent, and then I beat him, and I think it was Kyle, I believe, was in the quarters, and he had me down 2-0 from what I can remember. I just relaxed, I fought back, I had a chance, I missed it, and that was it. So, but hey, it was fun. So
that year, 2019, we've got to mention a win which I'm sure ranks highly for you, partnering Jeff Smith to win the WDF World Cup pairs for Canada. And I was looking at the run that you had to get that title. You beat the Netherlands in the semi-finals, then England in the finals. So it's a tough route to the title. What memories come to mind from that win with Jeff?
Oh, it's just, it's something that we both can reflect on and look back and say, what, that was pretty cool. We heard there was 52 countries involved, which is a really big number, and there's a lot of good players there for sure, like from all over the world. But yeah, I mean, we kind of knew we were going to hook up there and shoot together before we went, after we knew we made it. And so that day we just we went in practicing and stuff, and he hit a 9-darter by himself. I hit a 9-darter, then we hit one together, and then we almost hit one on stage. I was like, wow. So, we felt really good. So, yeah, but it was fun.
You're playing well, and over the years, you've won a lot of titles back home. But for you, from the titles that you have won in either America or Canada, are there any which stand out the most or mean the most to you?
I mean, every one is a good thing when you win. Nobody's going to win every title, of course. You go in there and you hope and you try your best and you want to win, but it doesn't happen. But you know what? Everyone that I've won, I'm definitely happy with and grateful for. And and I'm just going to keep on doing what I can and try and win some more.
Well, let's get on to this year. And I was listening to your chat with Andrew on the Inside the WDF podcast recently. You mentioned that you had the WDF World Championship, had it gone ahead as planned in January, you would have played at Q School after. How disappointing was it when you got the news that World Championship had been postponed?
I wasn't really too disappointed. As I say, I had plans to go to Q School possibly after and stuff, but I tried Q School years ago, and I was just exhausted by the end of it. I was already over there playing. I was there for a couple of weeks, and I was just done at the end of it. I just wanted to go home. But it is what it is, like I said, and it worked out well for me there because I ended up going in April and staying for the week and winning the qualifier, and look what happened. So you never know.
Yeah, that's right. The World Championship, it goes ahead in early April. You lose a last leg decider to Ian Jones in that first round on the opening weekend, and it was a cutthroat format, just being the best of 3 sets. How did you reflect on that one?
It was definitely disappointing because I know, no disrespect to him or anything, but I know I'm a better player. And, right now anyway, I'm playing really well, but, hey, that's how the game goes. I mean, he had one dart in his hand and he hit the double, and there's what wins it. Like I said, averages don't win, but and I had my opportunity to turn it around and I let it slip through my fingers. So it's always my fault when I don't win. So you have to accept it and move on.
And it's now the infamous Uber ride from Lakeside to Reading to play in those World Masters qualifiers. But I guess given that you were staying at Lakeside during the week with all the boards set up in the hotel, I played Andrew on them as well, having all the players there, it gave you plenty of opportunity to get some good practice in ahead of going to Reading for those qualifiers.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the boards were there, and I went down. I didn't go down probably maybe every second day. I just went down, and like when my buddy Sean was there too, we just helped them practice there a little bit and stuff along the way. But I went down through here and there, didn't overdo it. But yeah, it was great. Jumped in the Uber, and the way I went is let's give it a shot. So it's just like, wow, okay. So it was cool.
And it couldn't have gone any better. You had a good run as well in the flyer on the Friday, then the first qualifier on the Saturday. You were looking pretty comfortable up until the semi-finals. You got pushed all the way by Robert Rickwood, come through that one 6-5. Was it good in a way to be really tested like that going into the final with Paul Hogan?
Oh, yeah, guaranteed. I mean, it's always great to be pushed. I think any player knows that if you're in a groove, it's good. But other players that push you will make both of you play well and better, as far as I can say. But yeah, I mean, and then Paul, I ended up playing Paul there in the final, but I think he got down on himself a little bit, and I just took advantage of it. I just stayed calm, cool, and just said, you know what, I'm going to do this and get it done. So, but it was fun, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned the final with Paul, a 6-0 win to book that quick return to Lakeside. And I have to admit, when I saw you going through the field a few weeks later at Lakeside to that title, the only thing which surprised me was that you were eligible to play in the seniors and you were over 50. What's your secret?
You know what? It's just, I'm just trying to just continue to play and practice. And and you never know when good things are going to happen. I guess that's the best thing that I can say about it. But yeah, it's, I'm not ready to give up on it yet. I still feel fired up inside and hungry to play, and I want to get better. So yeah, I'm going to continue on for sure.
And watching you on that weekend, what impressed me was not just that comeback against Kevin Painter from 3-1 down in the first round, but the amount of 4 and 5 visit legs you were bringing out, 12 darters, 13, 14, 15 darters, and at crucial times in the sets as well, beating Robert Thornton, Colin Monk, Richie Howson to make the final. When did you start to really think the title could be heading back to Canada?
You know what? Believe it or not, I mean, I felt pretty comfortable against Robert. I know he's a great player and he can light up the board for sure. But I was fortunate enough to just keep my composure and do what I do. Then Colin kind of relaxed, I think, a little against him, but he hit some shots at the right time to give him his opportunities. But like I said, I just try to stay composed and move on. And then I played Richie there, and I know Richie's a great player. I've seen him play. Looks like a real great guy as well. And I just wanted to focus and do my thing and get the jump on him. And then just get me to the final. And I said, okay, let's play Phil. And then I know Phil's not Phil of 7 or 8 years ago, but it's a great feeling to beat a legend like that for sure.
Yeah, definitely the final against Phil Taylor. It was a nervy start from both of you, both missing darts at the double, but you run away with it. You go 5-2 up, you see it home 6-3 with that 96 finish. What emotions were going through your head as that double 18 goes in?
Just as to say, until the game is over, just before, you just look at it and say, okay, I got to do this, just go up, and just before, you don't celebrate too early, of course. But yeah, it was a great feeling. I'm not a fan of 36. But, the triple 20 went in, I right at it, and it went in. I was like, oh my God, here we go. And then you don't really believe it at first, but it sinks in over time for sure. Yeah,
we saw on stage after you were quite lost for words after. Was it then that the achievement just hit you? And what's been the reaction back home as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it was up and down there with my emotions there a little bit. Like I say, to believe that it actually happened and stuff, and just when you talk to certain people, it comes out of you there a little bit. But yeah, I mean, so far so good. It's been great. I haven't really got to see a lot of people home because I just got back from the U.S. But yeah, I imagine we'll have a little gathering. They're going to send me over the trophy, which I get to keep for a year, which is nice. And so hopefully I'll get to take it around to a few, the bars here and places that I play and get to, show it off to my friends. So it's pretty cool.
Excellent, well deserved. And we should touch on last weekend as well, the US Darts Masters. You pushed Going Price close, and it took a brilliant last leg from Leonard Gates to knock you out of the North American Championship. What was it like playing at Madison Square Garden? It looked like a great crowd over the whole weekend.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's I didn't know how good it was going to turn out, but you know what? They've done an amazing job, and they had a great turnout. Playing Gerwin Price, like I say, he's a great player. He's still playing well now. He's on his game. But and I mean, I had my opportunity to go up on him, I think 5-4, but you know what? I just wired the double. He took it out, and then he got the jump in. He took out the 112. So, but hey, I felt totally confident the whole time. Felt great. And I'm watching these guys, and I feel that I can compete with them and stay with them. So, I mean, I'm just gonna do what I can, and keep on going forward with it. So.
Well, speaking of competing with those top players, I know you've said before that playing at Ali Pali, the PDC World Championship. That is high on the bucket list for you. What does the rest of this year look like? Have you mapped out what you're going to be playing in, and what would it mean to get up on that Ali Pali stage?
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of another dream come true, obviously. I'm hoping to be maybe that is make it there one day and be that fairy tale story, and then just do what I do, because I said I'm really finding a good form with my game right now. So, yeah, I got to continue on. I'm going to go to do some CDC events here. There's another spot available through Canada. And, yeah, if I can get to that top spot at the end of the year, then I'll be there. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Good
luck with that. And lastly, before we let you go, we know it's been a busy few weeks for you, also juggling the work commitments as well. But Q School 2023, is that on your radar? Are you looking to give Q School another go?
I don't know. Like I say, I'll say there's a big question mark there. But at this point right now, I can't say for sure. So, yeah, so I'm just going to wait and see what the future brings me. So we can, and then make a decision from there for sure.
Well, there's going to be plenty more darts to play before then. But David, it's a pleasure to chat to you. Congratulations again on the big title at Lakeside, and wish you all the best for the rest of the year and trying to get to Ali Pali at the end of the year as well.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for having me on. I do appreciate it. Thanks everybody for the support. And it means a lot. So thank you.
Thanks again to David for joining us. Now on to the other event which took place at Madison Square Garden over the weekend, and that was the North American Darts Championship, and Leonard Gates booking a date at Ali Pali, beating Danny Baggish in the final to secure that spot in the PDC World Championship at the end of the year. But do you think the Soldier could be the next North American PDC tour card holder?
Definitely has every chance. And he and Danny Lobby, I think, at least of the Americans, are the two I would consider the favorites. I mean, David Cameron, of course, is good enough. We could see someone if Dawson Marshall decides to play the circuit again. He's won his tour card before. He certainly can win it back. And there's plenty of others. But I think the favorites are and should be Leonard Gates and Danny Lobby. And if you remember 5 years ago now, when no one knew what Dart Connect was, but you knew that the first U.S. Darts Masters was about to take place in Vegas, and the qualifiers were going on, and you could follow along to the qualifiers by going to this new thing called Dart Connect, and you got to see all the stats. Now we take it for granted. We're so used to it, but it was a novel thing for that event. And what did Leonard Gates do? Well, he didn't qualify. He finished just outside the 8 spots that qualified. But across the 4 events, 3 times he averaged 105. And in those 3 matches where he averaged 105, if you take out the first leg, so after the first leg in each of those 3 matches, he averaged over 116. He got better. He started each of those matches with 17, 20, and 18 darters. So if you take those out, he averaged 116.61 across those the other 9 legs in those 3 matches. That's the standard he's able to play at when he's playing at his best. And the big difference that we saw from him this weekend was why he won the North American Darts Championship. It's why he won a match on the stage in the U.S. Darts Masters, is that his consistency and B game are better. He's a great soft tip player. He's becoming a very good steel tip player. And the consistency is now getting in his game as he's playing more of it. That will do him a world of good at Q School, assuming he goes, assuming he needs to go. He's in the World Championship now. All he has to do is win quite a few matches at the World Championships, and he doesn't even have to go to Q School. We'll leave that for another day. Will he make the semifinals of the World Championship? Probably not. So he probably will have to go to Q School. But his A game is unquestionably good enough, because his A game is a 116 average. But his B game is also good enough, and his consistency and how he's able to grind out matches is only getting better. So, yeah, I think he can be the next tour card holder from North America. Danny Lobby similarly is right there in that conversation. I think Danny Lobby has the brighter future because he's younger, and I think just his overall game is or will become better than Leonard Gates. But going into Q School next year, Gates should be among the favorites to win a tour card. Of course, anything can happen at Q School. We've seen that in every direction in the past, but he has every chance, and rightfully so.
That was another name I was going to mention there, Danny Lowby Jr. I think you'd probably put those two, Leonard Gates and Danny Lowby Jr., the current players from America and Canada that don't have a PDC tour card at the moment. You'd put those as the 2 leading contenders going into Q School next year. And that is, as you say, unless they go on a deep run at Ali Pali. And the last couple of years, we have seen players get close within 1 win, 2 wins of getting that tour card. Danny Baggish a couple of years ago, Raymond Smith last year. So it's not out of the realms that it could happen, but it's probably more unlikely. And you'd probably say that those two players will have to go to Q School if they want to get on the tour. And just sticking with Leonard Gates, he's probably one of my favourite guests from this year so far. When we spoke to him just before Lakeside, and it was a surprise then that he'd never played in a steel tip world championship before he came to Lakeside and played the WDF World Championship a couple of months ago now. But he's made his mark really in the soft tip game, you'd say, in the bigger events in that world of darts, and playing in the world events, which they haven't been held over the last few years due to the pandemic. But when they were on, we were seeing Leonard Gates in them, and we were seeing him do some damage and win some of them. So to see him transfer that game from soft tip to steel tip, and we should mention as well that he had a few issues with the counting over the weekend, but we've seen players win major titles in the PDC when they've not been at their best counting. So that's not a huge thing that's going to hold him back too much, I don't think. But just going back to the chat that we had with Leonard and his love for darts, that was just infectious. And even after he won this North American Championship, that was Saturday afternoon in the US, he said, let's play some more darts. He had to play the quarterfinals of the US Darts Masters a few hours later, and he was bang up for playing in it. So he's someone that has just got a love of playing darts. And he said that one of the big things for him, he wanted to play the top player in darts when he first started playing steel tip, and that was Phil Taylor, who went on to retire, didn't get the chance to play him, but he did play the top player in the world right now as far as the rankings, Peter Wright, the world champion, and played him at the weekend. So I think Leonard Gates is the one to watch, really. And as you say, we've seen him play Q School a few times now. We've seen how high he can get that average. I think this Q School 2022 had 113 average. We've seen him put some big averages in the past in other tours as well. So we know he has got the game to match pretty much anyone in the world on his day. But Q School is a different beast entirely. You do have to get it right at the right time. And you can have 113 average in the first round and play someone that maybe averages 50. That could be the way it goes sometimes. So he's got to bring out those performances, those shots at the right time. And I think we saw that at the weekend as well. I want to mention the semi-final he had on the way to winning that qualifier, the game against David Cameron. He was 5-3 down. He goes 14 to break, 15 to hold, and then breaks in 12 darts in the deciding leg to win it and come through that. And even the game against Danny Baggish as well, some of the shots he was taking out there, some of the legs he was putting in, I think his last 3 legs that he won were 15, 15 and 16. So he was playing to a very good level when the stakes were at their highest. So yeah, for me, I think you'd say Leonard Gates, Danny Lowby Jr. as well. We know how good he can be. So yeah, I think they're going to be the 2 players to watch from North America when we get to Q School next year.
There's of course, not just events going on in the U.S. over the past weekend, but there was also the third weekend on the development tour this year, and we're now past the halfway point. Which player or players have caught your eye from the first 3 weekends? And since you're answering this first, I assume you're going to steal the one name I'm going to mention because, well, there's one name that certainly sticks out, I would assume, for both of us.
Yeah, definitely. I think we were both going to say Keane Barry for what he did at the weekend, but I'll start off by mentioning a few other players as well. And going into this third weekend, this was the first weekend of the season where the players have gone outside of the UK. They've gone to Germany for these development tour events. But you look at the first couple of weekends, and I think we had something like 9 different winners from the first 10 events. And there's probably people looking at it going, well, Josh Rock, given the first weekend that he had, winning 2 titles and getting to a final, he didn't play in that second weekend because he was playing on the Euro Tour. And the player that we've just seen have such a dominant weekend, Keane Barry, I think he was playing on the Euro Tour that second weekend, so he missed it as well. But you look at the weekend just gone, and Keane Barry to pick up 2 titles, get to another final as well. It's impressive stuff, and that has put him to the top of the rankings. After those 15 events, we've got 9 more events to go, but you think where he was before this past weekend, he wasn't really near that top spot, but he's managed to put himself right in the mix now and to get that top spot in the development tour. And even the players underneath as well, Nathan Rafferty, we've seen him pick up a second title of the season. We've seen Gert Nenchez as well, a recent guest on the show. We've seen him pick up his second title of the year, and a player that we've mentioned quite a few times already this year, someone who is making some real strides, a young talent, Sebastian Białecki, winning his first title of the season as well. And the way he did it as well, beating Bradley Brooks, a former World Youth Champion, 5-0 in the semi-final, and then in the final against the man of the moment, King Barry, 3-ton-plus finishes he had in that final to beat him 5-3 in that one. So that takes some good going as well. But yeah, I think you can't really look beyond, as far as an overall season so far, King Barry and Josh Rock. They are two of the players that have really impressed at times this year. And I should mention as well, Josh Rock, that first weekend, he had 2 titles and a runner-up. The other 2 events, he didn't even play, and he missed the first day of the season, that Friday in early February. So that's quite a weekend, quite a debut as far as the development tour goes. But I was looking as well, we can delve into the stats quite a bit on this via Dart Connect, as you mentioned, and looking at players' averages, but also looking at what the other player is throwing back at them. And okay, you've got the top 2 at the moment, that the highest averages as far as what players are throwing at them, but those 2 players, they've only played 2 games or 1 game between them. You look at the next 2 on that list, you've got Josh Rock, the players are throwing an 83 average overall, and King Barry an 82 average. So you've got the two of the top players there. They are having to perform pretty well in a lot of these games to get through over the line. They're not getting too many easy games from players. So I think that's quite a telling point as well. But I think I'd say King Barry and Josh Rock for what they've did the first and the third weekends, but you also got to throw in those other 2 players that have doubled up at the weekend, Gert Nenches and Nathan Rafferty. They're second and third on that list at the moment, and it is set for an exciting race. We have got 2 more weekends, another weekend in Germany in August, and then it finishes up in Wigan in October. But like I said to a few of the players that we've spoke to, Nathan Gervin and Gert Nenches on the show recently, it is set for an exciting finish because you've got a lot of players that have won titles already this year. They are capable of winning titles again. I think this one could go down to the wire as far as who finishes top of the list.
Well, you basically said everything I was going to say, and rightfully so. I mean, you have to begin or end or both with King Barry and Josh Rock because they've been the 2 standout players so far, even though each of them have skipped a weekend. In Josh Rock's case, won 2 titles at a weekend that he skipped nearly half the events of as well. So they are the 2 standout players. And if they had played every event, you would imagine they would have been running away by now with the top 2 spots. Not that really means anything for them. Josh Rock's on the first year of a 2-year tour card and is playing at a level that I would expect him to make the World Championships and maybe some other events before the end of the year. King Barry, well, he's in the top 64 in the world, and he's on track to qualify for nearly everything this year, and he missed a weekend because he had to play some Pro Tour events. He is a phenomenal player, and this is just an added extra competition when he doesn't have something else to dominate in. Beyond those 2, you said a lot of the names I was going to mention, but I'll go to a couple other players who have been more selective with their competing. I'll mention Nico Springer, who didn't compete at the first 2 weekends and didn't compete at the first day of the third weekend. He skipped the Friday, but he played the Saturday and Sunday in Germany, and very first event made it all the way to the final, losing to Gert Nenches. And then the next event, he went out in the last 32, but it was against King Barry, and he played all right in that match. And then he made another last 16 on the Sunday. So his first time dipping in for the year, made a final and lost to King Barry in one of the other 2 events. If Nico Springer were to have the opportunity to play more of these, he's shown some real potential, and he's a player to continue to keep an eye out on, but we don't know if he'll have the opportunity to play any more of the development tours. And then there were some other players who just jumped in for a weekend as well. I don't know if we mentioned Joseph Lionel, the American, who went to the second weekend, but played at a fairly high standard and cashed in all of the events that weekend, including making it to a last 16. Didn't have any real standout performances, but played at a fairly consistent level and averaged over the course of those 5 matches 82. It's still the 29th highest average. It's the first we've seen from him on the development tour, and one of the first we've ever seen from an American. So since this weekend is about North American darts, it's good to see some of the youth players in the U.S. go over and give it a go. Obviously, he's only done 1 weekend. It is expensive and difficult to get over, especially during the pandemic. But hopefully he'll give another go, maybe around the World Youth Championships, because if we've seen anything from that weekend, it's that he's good enough and he should give it a try, give it a fair go at some point. Beyond that, you mentioned a lot of the other names I was going to mention, and they're mostly the players near the top of the order of merit, as well as statistically near the top. But I'll go back to where I started. King Barry is a superstar in the making, and it's not going to take long for that making to be complete. He is a world-class player, and he's just too good for the development tour. That's why he's already won 3 of these titles. And if he plays more of these weekends, we'll probably add another 3 or so before the season's up.
Time to switch gears to this weekend, and we'll start off with our next guest, a player that will be making their debut in the World Series this weekend. He is the first player from Denmark to win a tour card at Q School. Here's our chat with Vladimir Andersen. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by one of the new tour card holders for 2022, Denmark's Vladimir Andersen. Thanks for the time, Vladimir. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks.
Good to hear. And we're talking at the start of an exciting upcoming few weeks for you with the World Series in Denmark, the World Cup in Germany next week as well. How excited are you to be playing in these 2 events?
Really excited. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not playing my best darts right now, but I hope it will get there when I have to play on the stage.
Well, lots to get to, but let's rewind back to the start for you in darts. How old were you when you first discovered the game? How did you get into playing?
Oh, that's a long time ago. I was 7, I think. My mom and dad played. So, yeah, I just thought it was fun, but I couldn't start in a club before I was 10. So when I was 10, I started in the club, and I have played since.
And I was looking from a young age, there was a lot of potential. People saw a lot of potential in you. You went top of the rankings in Denmark at 18, and a year later you won the Danish Championship, the national singles title. What are your memories of those early successes that you had in your career?
Yeah, when I look back, I played pretty good at the moment, and next couple of years, yeah. And then I got a ban in my mid-20s, and one more, and yeah, that wasn't so good for my career. And yeah, I'm not quite back at that level, but hope to get there again.
We have got the World Cup coming up. We've already seen you play in the World Cup a little while ago. I think you were 21 when you played in the first PDC World Cup in 2010. You lost out to Austria in a close first round game. What did it mean to you to put on that Danish shirt in that first event?
Yeah, of course, that was pretty cool. I've played for the national teams in the WDF, but yeah, playing the World Cup in the PDC, that's something else. I think it's a little bit more fun actually, but yeah, I look forward to try it again.
And earlier that year in 2010, you also won the German Gold Cup. We saw you play some of the Players' Championship events across Europe as well, even playing Adrian Lewis in your first game. What were those experiences like for you?
Oh, it's a long time ago, but yeah, I remember it. That was my first game ever in the PDC. You didn't have to have a tour card back then. You could just pay to play, and yeah, my first game ever was against him, and they decided to put us up on stage to play. I didn't really think so much about it back then, but I know I went in front 5-4, but lost in the end. But a good experience.
Fast forward 1 year, 2011, and you came so close to qualifying for Lakeside. You lost out in the final round of the qualifiers to Christian Kist in a last set. Christian would, of course, go on to win the whole thing at Lakeside a few months later. What was that like seeing that unfold? Did you think that could have been you causing that upset at Lakeside that week?
I don't know if I would have won it like he did, but that wasn't so good afterwards, the feeling, because I know I missed 5 match starts to win the game. But yeah, back then I didn't really think so much about the darts, and I was not so nervous when playing. That has come a little bit more now when I won the tour card. I don't know really why, but yeah, it's not easy at the moment.
Well, 4 years later, we do see you come through the qualifiers to get to Lakeside, but not long after that, the Danish Darts Union hand you a 6-month ban. It means you're taken out of the draw. How tough was that to get over?
Oh, really tough, because I played very good at the moment, and yeah, not so long after my father died as well, so everything was taken away with both the darts and my dad. So yeah, not a good time in my life.
Sorry to hear about your dad. Was he an inspiration for you, for your darts? Was he one of the people that cheered you on, got you into the darts?
Yeah, he helped with everything when I had to go out and travel or something like that. He was always there. So yeah, big support. I lost there. Hasn't been the same again ever since, no.
You mentioned the bands. I think the largest one you had at the end of 2019, you had a 2-year ban. Can you talk us through why you were banned, and also after receiving that severe of a punishment for that long, did you consider just walking away from darts at that point?
No, I've never been close to walking away from the darts. I've just waited it out with my bands and thinking about coming back and still playing. What happened? I'm not quite sure, because I just know I got an email from the Danish Dart organization, and I've already had 2 bans and I couldn't do anything about it. I tried to go through and tried to cancel it both times, the first 2 times, but it wasn't possible, so I didn't even try to do it the 3rd time, and I wasn't even reading the mail, because I knew I would just lose it anyway.
Well, not long after that, the world shuts down with the pandemic, and a lot of those 2 years that you had the ban, we were all sat at home. There wasn't a lot of events happening. How did you spend that time? Did you keep up the practice at home, ready for when you could play again?
A little bit, yeah. I played a little bit over the internet, a little bit sometimes, but not 100%. And then I played for a German club as well, because that wasn't a problem with my band, so I could keep it a little bit up there.
As we get through 2021, more events start to return. Your band's getting close to being served. When did the idea to enter Q School at the start of this year come into your mind?
To play for the Q School? I had a bet with a friend. He had to lose 60 kilos, and he did so in that year, 21. So I had to go and play. And I wasn't really ready, and I was only practicing the last, so 100% 2 weeks before. And I wasn't really ready to get the tour card. But lucky to do so. Had a good week and qualified. Got the card.
So I'm guessing you weren't expecting your friend to lose all of the 60 kilos then?
No, maybe not that fast, because I think he did it in 10 months.
Wow.
2 months before the tour card. He called me and said, now you have to sign up. Okay. And in the same month, in December, one of my best friends died. So that wasn't a good thing just before the tour card qualification. So I played with his stars at the tournament and won the card with them.
Yeah, I was reading an interview that you did with the Danish media, and you mentioned that the darts that you used for Q School, they've got quite a story behind them. I think is it Bjarne Iversen, the former Danish champion? They're his darts that you used?
Yeah, that's right. He got them in, I think it was around 89 or 90 something. I'm not quite sure, but at a tournament, he got them from Eric Bristow, and that was his favorite darts. So because it was his favorite player, so I decided just to play with them.
Are they similar darts to the darts that you were using before, or did they take a bit of getting used to?
A long straight barrel. Then it really doesn't matter what it is, but a little bit. I don't know. I've never played with the same for so long. It doesn't really matter. I'm used to play with a lot of different, and I have to do it again because the last tournament I had was at Barnsley or Wigan. I forgot my darts.
Oh.
And then the week after I had to play in Germany for the team. Yeah, and then I forgot my darts there as well. So now I don't really know what to play with.
And I'm right in saying as well that the darts that you got given by that used to belong to Eric Bristow and Bjarne Iversen, you don't use them at all now? You've put them away?
Because because I'm good at throwing my darts away, and it would be a shame to lose them as well.
Well, let's talk about Q School then, because it couldn't have got off to a better start for you. 102 average in your first game. You come through that first stage after the 3 days. Obviously, the standard goes up for that final stage with the ex-tour card holders coming in. How were you feeling heading into the start of that final stage when the tour cards did become available?
I wasn't really thinking so much about it in the whole week. The first couple of days were I was just playing and having fun with my friends, and then I had to play the finals and still wasn't thinking so much about it. I didn't expect to win a tour card, so I just tried and had some fun and had the first day was pretty good. And then the last 3 days I was feeling a bit sick, but still managed to get, was it 1 or 2 points the second day, even though I was a bit sick. But the last 2 days I couldn't play at all. But luckily in the end it was enough.
Yeah, it definitely was a semi-final on the first day, last 16 on the second day, and as you mentioned, you had a couple of early exits on the last couple of days, but you said there you weren't feeling very well. What was the moment like when you found out that you had done enough and you had got that tour card?
Of course I was happy and celebrated the whole way back home in the car, and really I didn't know what to expect because I didn't know anything about it. What the tour card was all about and what I could do with it and which tournament I had to play and all this. It was all so new, and I still don't really know everything about it. I'm just trying, but the last couple of months I haven't played so good. I can't really find my game, but I really hope it comes back to this weekend in Copenhagen and next week at the World Cup.
Let's hope so. And you're obviously making history for Denmark too, becoming the first player from Denmark to win a tour card at Q School. And as we've spoke about, it's not been a smooth path to this moment playing on the professional circuit. But what did it mean to win that tour card after going through those tough times with the bans and everything else and having your progress from an early age put back?
It's been nice to know and see. I still got a little bit of my old starts before my bans, and I can play some good starts, but I'm still missing a little bit and want to build on it, but I don't know what happened the last couple of months. I have to do something to get back and at a good level. It's been tough.
Before we saw you play on the Pro Tour this year with your tour card, we saw you playing on the Nordic and Baltic Tour. You won the first event of the season. What's that circuit been like to play on this year? Has it helped your game?
Yeah, it was. I think it was the week after the tour card, or was it 2 weeks after? And I just won the tour card, so maybe that gave me a little bit. And I thought, I really believed a little bit more in myself, and that helped me maybe a little bit. And I was a bit lucky in the final against Daniel Larsson. He missed a couple of darts, and then I took it. It's been good to be back after the ban, and at least I can play a lot of darts again. That's very nice.
We've got to mention as well the video that you put up of that 113 finish, ball 13 ball. I loved watching that. Is that something that we can expect to see you try and bring out on the big stage at some point?
I don't know. Normally I just shoot at what feels right. And sometimes, it just comes to me, now you have to do this and do this. And if I'm at, let's say, 76, 3 times in a row, maybe I'll shoot 3 different ways. It's just the feeling at the moment. That's how I play normally.
Good stuff. Well, we have seen you pick up some scalps already on the Pro Tour. Most notably, I would say, is beating Luke Humphries, who's had a really good year so far. What have been the highlights for you so far, these early months playing on the tour?
I don't know. It's been tough and I don't. When I have some good games, I throw it away in the end, and some of the games, it's like some of the players handed me a chance or two, and I took them. The game before was against was David Evans. He missed a couple of darts, and then I just played Luke Humphrey like it was a free game, and I managed to do a decent average. Not the best, but good enough in the end.
Well, let's get on to these next few weeks, starting with the Nordic Darts Masters, a World Series event that we first saw held last year in Copenhagen. It seemed to go down well with the fans. Did you manage to watch much of it last year?
A little bit. I was actually at vacation back then with a friend, so I couldn't see all of it, but I saw some of it.
And of course, this time round, you are going to get to be on that stage playing in the Nordic Darts Masters. We don't know who you're going to play in the first round, but how much are you looking forward to playing in front of your home fans, what should be a big crowd as well this weekend?
I'm really looking forward to it. I hope it can bring me a little bit extra on my averages and the darts. So I don't hope to play mid-70s, and I know I have to be at least in the players I have to meet. It must be 90s and over just to have a chance. So I hope the crowd can give me some extra when it's in Denmark, and I really believe in it.
Good to hear. And I know you mentioned as well off air that you're still working as well. Darts, you're juggling both of the two at the same time. How does that work, juggling the two of them? Is it a difficult thing to do, trying to play on the professional circuit while also working at the same time as well?
Yeah, it's not always easy. Sometimes I have to go to the tournaments, come back, work 2 or 3 days, and back to a tournament, work 2-3 days. It's not easy. It's pretty hard sometimes. A couple of months ago, I had 10 weekends in a row where going back to work, and sometimes it's a bit stressful, but I have to, because the dart is not the best right now, so I have to get another income, right? And
lastly, I know you've been asking before on Twitter about a nickname. Have you decided on a nickname yet? No, not really. When I decide a nickname, it can't really just change it right away if it doesn't fit. So I think I'll wait a little bit and see if people comes up with something, very good. That's fair enough. Well, Vladimir, it's a pleasure to chat to you. We appreciate your time, and congratulations again on getting the Tour card at Q School, and wish you all the best for this weekend, the World Cup, and the rest of the year as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks again to Vladimir for joining us. Now on to the World Series continues this weekend with the Nordic Darts Masters. Will we see any upsets in the first round in Copenhagen?
I mean, to some extent, whether there's an upset depends on the draw, because I think Madars Razma would probably be the favorite against Fallon Sherrick based on what we saw this past weekend. So if they drew, the question is it one of the seeds who would be the favorite, or is it one of the Nordic and Baltic qualifiers who would be the favorite? But let's assume the 8 seeds or the 8 invited PDC professionals are the favorites. I mean, I think Madars Razma can beat anyone in this field. He's already made a final on the Pro Tour this year. He's had a phenomenal year as he looks to try to finally make the world match play, make some of the other televised events, and start to move up towards the top 32 in the world. And I'll be the first to admit, when he switched over to the PDC, I thought he might be okay, but I didn't think he would really make a name for himself. I was wrong. It took a few years. It took him losing his tour card and winning it back before he really started to break through. But he has become a very good player, and he can beat anyone in the world on his day. And will we see an upset? Will we see him beat someone? I don't know. We'll see what the draw is, but he absolutely can. Darius Labanauskas has taken a little bit of a step back this year. He's struggled at times, but he's still a very good player, and he's a player that, when he's at his best, is a World Championship quarterfinalist for a reason. We'll see what the draw is like for him as well, but he'll need to up his game from what we've seen so far this season. Among the rest of the players, I don't know them as much. I mean, obviously, Daniel Larson we've seen a bit of, Margaret Kentelly we've seen a bit of, and we know they're classy competitors. Vladimir Andersen won his tour card this year, but we haven't seen as much of him because he's had to skip a few weekends, so he hasn't yet really made his name known on the tour. The 2 Danish players don't know much about. The Icelandic player don't know much about. Obviously, we have some stats from them on Dart Connect because they've played the Nordic and Baltic Tour, and they're competitive competitors. But would you fancy any of those three to pull an upset? Unlikely. Could they? Sure, but I'd be surprised if they did. But for those first five I mentioned, and particularly Madars Rasma, it would not surprise me. And I do expect at least one of these players to get a result, if not more than one. And if Darius Labanauskas can get back to anywhere near his best, he absolutely could not just win one, but win multiple matches in this event, like he's done in some other televised majors so far in his career.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And I guess if you wanted to compare the 8 players that represented Canada and America last week at the US Darts Masters, compare them to the players that are going to be representing the Nordic region this weekend, you'd probably say you've got the players last weekend, they're maybe closer together in terms of ability, but you look at the players this weekend and you've probably got a few players in there at the top of that list. Darius Labanauskas, Madars Rasma, maybe they are better than the American-Canadian players that we saw last week in terms of current form, what we've seen in the past. As you say, Darius Labanauskas making a World Championship quarterfinal at Ali Pali a few years ago, and Madars Rasma, what a run he's on at the moment, slowly going about his business. I think he's probably gone a bit under the radar how well he's doing at the moment. You know, he's on the spots for the World Match Play, the World Grand Prix, and come the end of the year, if he has a good run, gets in all those events, maybe gets a win or two at Ali Pali, we could be turning the page on 2022 and we could be talking about Madars Rasma as a top 32 player from Latvia in the PDC. It's definitely possible this year, and the way he's playing at the moment. So yeah, I'd probably put those two at the top of the list. And we look back to this event last year and we saw Madars Rasma, he was the only player from those the regional qualifiers, if you like, to come through, beat Nathan Aspinall in a close game. Darius Labanauskas, he pushed Michael van Gerwen all the way to a last leg decider. So I think regardless of who those two players draw, I think they are going to be a handful for any of those 8 players. And as far as the other 6, you'd probably say less likely for them to cause an upset. I think Daniel Larsson and Marco Cantelli, we've seen them a bit more on the stage in the past. Vladimir Andersen, we've not seen too much of, but we are going to see a bit more of him in these next few weeks. We're going to see him in the World Cup next week. The other players, as you say, probably less on the side of experience for them, but who knows? We look back to last weekend and I think the PDC, they tweeted that Leonard Gates stunned Fallon Sherrick. I personally didn't think it was much of an upset. I think we've seen a lot more of Leonard Gates recently than we have of Fallon Sherrick playing darts at a competitive level. So for me, that wasn't too much of an upset. And some of these players as well, we've seen a lot of them on that Nordic and Baltic tour, which is doing them good as well, getting that experience of playing in that setup. So maybe if one of those lesser known players draws Fallon and Fallon plays a 71 average again, I don't expect that. I expect her to play better this weekend. But if Fallon produces that level again, they're going to have every shot of course in that upset. So yeah, it's draw dependent as a lot of these things are, but I think you've got to say that the 2 leading names at the top of that list, Darius and Madars, they are the 2 to watch out for. But depending on how the draw goes, we could maybe see one of those other 6 make a name for themselves and get a win on that stage as well.
And now we'll move on to our third and final interview on this week's show, and it's with the former world number 1, Rod Harrington.
I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the PDC director and commentator, Rod Harrington. Thanks for the time, Rod. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm very well, thanks.
Good to hear. Well, let's start off with the weekend just gone. You were in New York for the return of the US Darts Masters. We saw Michael Smith win his 2nd World Series title. How close do you think Michael is now to winning that first major title?
Well, I think he's on the verge of it. I mean, there was a lot of people, and myself included, tipped him to win it. You know, going into New York, he was won the last 2 European events and won the last Premier League qualifier. So, you know, he was on fire coming in. His confidence was high. It's in that bubble where you're always thinking you're going to have that extra bit of luck playing everybody. And he did, and he got over the line. I was pleased for him. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, in all those events he's winning, he's beaten all the players that he would beat to win a major. So there's no reason why he just can't go on and win that major very shortly.
Can't argue with that. And looking at the event as a whole, it seemed to go down well with the fans. I think there was around 7,000 tickets sold at Madison Square Garden across the weekend, already confirmed a return next year, June 2023. As someone who was there, how was the trip? Was it a success for the PDC?
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah. You've got to give an awful lot of credit to Matt Porter and all his staff, and that includes all the staging crew and the security. Everybody that makes up the event to make it a success. And I walked out into the arena quite a few times on the walk-ons on Saturday night, especially, and it was just like a Premier League night. Everyone was dressed up, everyone was chanting. It was first class. I was so pleased for everybody that it was a success, and we see some great darts. We see some good darts from the North Americans as well. They're on the verge of really taking on our top pros. I mean, a lot of them playing on the British circuit anyway. They won the tour card and that. They just need a little bit more experience on that big stage when it gets really noisy, and then they'll start to beat our boys.
Definitely. And as far as darts in America, cracking that market, growing the game, what do you think is the next step for the PDC in continuing to progress darts in North America?
Well, it is things like especially the Saturday night. That was so good. But from there, we need to get it on their sports shows. They have so many. You wake up in the morning, you turn the telly on, it's all sports shows, sports talkings, from baseball, American football, even, college softball, the girls, and golf, and that lacrosse. I mean, they have a wide range of sports programs. We need to get it on there. Then that gets you into, I suppose, a little bit of a different market. And, when they start seeing 3,500 fans chant like it was on the Saturday night, then that's what's going to get people interested, outside of the people that already play darts. But America, I can remember they did a survey when I was out there in late 80s, early 90s. There was something like 23 million dart players in America. They just played local darts. We need to get it in front of them more. So get the networks that's going to get in front of them, and then it'll move on.
Well, let's get back to you. And we heard you back in the commentary box over the weekend in New York, first time in a little while. Are you just doing the World Series events as and when? What's the plan for you commentary-wise these days?
I'm just doing this World Series. I've actually retired from everything, even from the PDC now at the end of the month. So that's the first for you, Alex. I've decided throughout the lockdown and, getting on a bit, and I've always been someone that said we need new faces. I felt that it's getting a bit stale at times, the production, to be quite honest. And I thought, well, I'm part of that, and I'm an old fella. I think it was time for me to hang my darts up, as they say. But then Matt Porter said, look, why don't you do the World Series for the last time, as a little bit of a swan song. And, so I said, okay. And it worked out well because Donna and myself, at the last World Series in New York, we're going to go to Niagara Falls in Washington, then on to New York. So we managed to be able to do that, had a great 4 or 5 days in each as a nice little holiday. So it worked out well. But I'm doing the others in Australia, but that will be the last time I will be on TV or be heard on TV. When I pack things up, I literally pack things up.
Well, I wish you a happy retirement when that comes. And it's been a stop-start last couple of years. You mentioned it there, and we've got a full European Tour season again this year with the 13 events. And I remember we spoke last time, you had plans for the Euro Tour, make it more events, more players. Could we see that happen soon, or do you think there's going to be something else we get first in the progression of the Euro Tour?
I don't really know. I know the PDC are looking to put more prize money in next year, which I think it needs. My ambition in the game from way back was to turn the tour events into European events in time. The tour events have been in place since I put them there, something like 15, 20 years ago. I've always said that we need to move, and do a lot more European events. And I've always said, I started the model of starting the darts on golf, and that's the way golf went, We need to make the Europeans a lot bigger. Still use, obviously, the 128 tour cards and a few local qualifiers, but we need to see a lot more prize money in that. We need the top professionals to support those events more and put them in major cities, at times, European partners, put them outside of cities that are hard to get to, travel to for people and what have you. I heard there was a big exhibition in Budapest where 8,000 people turned up. Well, if 8,000 people turn up for an exhibition, why are they not turning up for our European events? If that started to happen, of course, the gate money helps out and everybody wins, and then you put it on. I mean, in time, whether it'll happen, but I'd like to see somewhere in the region of 15 to 20 European events that completely take over the Pro Tour events. The Challenge Tour and the Youth Tour will still be there. And then you have those, say, 20 European events, and then the major TV tournaments. And then you have, a real professional dart circuit that matches any other sport. But at the moment, we're just a little bit behind that.
Well, it has been good to see the calendar pick up again this year, and we've seen some of the players, particularly in the Premier League, talking about the schedule, saying that it's maybe too much to play and everything. If you were playing now and you're at your peak, would you be picking and choosing which events you were going in a bit more carefully?
Well, in our day, you had to play every event because the prize money weren't there. And I do accept that, that the players have got to look at their diary better. They can duck out of Pro Tour events. I'd rather see them duck out of 4 or 5 or a couple of weekends tour events, Pro Tour events, but play Europeans, because that's where the growth is going to be. But what I don't accept from any of them, that if they're going to do exhibitions and then lose in tournaments and complain that they've lost because they're tired, then I don't accept that. That's rubbish. Don't do exhibitions, because the big prize money is in the tournaments. If you go and play an exhibition like I heard some of them did last week in Hungary, I think it was, and then turn up at a Premier League night and go out early, then you're losing money. So I don't care how much that Premier League, that exhibition pays you, you're losing money on the tournaments, because it isn't only that tournament, but it's what that tournament leads to. They have got to look at the diary. We accept that. We have to keep the tour events going, because they're for the people as well that are not earning the money, and they need to earn money. They need to get more consistency and experience in their game. So they're not going to stop. But yes, the top pros, because like in New York, they have to fly in 3 or 4 days early, and they're doing the media for us and what have you, which is essential to make things work. All of us did that back in the day, and none of us benefited from it. So, players have to do it now, because that's what you do. They're all earning a lot of money out of the game, and they have to put a little bit back to make the future right.
Definitely. Well, when we had you on for our Darts Legend series, we were asking you about your favourite moments in the game, and you picked out starting the development tour and seeing how much that's grown. Obviously, this year we're back to the 5 weekends. We've got 2 in Germany. It feels like a proper tour again. Have you been following much of it this year? Because we've seen plenty of different winners so far.
Yeah, it proves that it's working, doesn't it? The development tour is for the pros, the people who want to become pros. It started off, and I probably explained this before, that, we had a Q school, and we're getting 500-600 people turn up Q school with only a few tour cards available. And then if we didn't put anything else on, then players are going away with nothing. So that's why the Challenge Tour was put on, to give them another avenue to get their tour card and get experience. And some of the players that lost their tour card, are seasoned pros that need another chance, and that was the chance. And then, of course, the development tour, the youth tour, and that coming through as well. So you've got all the academies, the development tour, the Challenge Tour, and then that leads on to the Pro Tour. And of course, without that system, something falls down and then stops the game, stops the progression of the game, stops new people coming through. But the development tour, when you look at the players that have come in, look at Luke Humphries, I will pick out one. When I see development tour players come through, that pleases me more than anything. Because, Luke Humphries, he's won 2 European events this year. He's come on leaps and bounds. Dimitri van den Berg, loads of them. Callum Ritz, Chris Dobie. There's so many of them that have come through our system. And when I see them on TV and I see them play well, and especially when I see them win, it does put a nice smile on my face. And I often speak to Dave Allen about it, because we went to every single weekend, whether it be development tour, challenge tour, or whatever. And it kind of puts a smile on both our faces that we played a big part in putting it where it is. And giving these young kids a chance to become millionaires, because that's what the top players are becoming now, millionaires.
You mentioned about the retirement. We know you've not got any plans to get the darts out again, but we have, since we last spoke, we have seen the World Seniors Tour take off with events at the Circus Tavern and Lakeside. Have you managed to catch any of it? What have you made of it?
I watched the first one a bit, and I was away for the second one, but I looked at it online a little bit. Jason Tane from Modus, he rang me up and said, would you like to play in them? I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to throw darts ever again. Not even in fun. It was a business for me. I closed that business down. Don't want to do it again. I'd rather play golf or go fishing or be with my grandchildren now. But I have watched it, and it's been disappointing, some of the performances of the guys that were great players. And looking at that made me make my mind up even more that no, I'm not going to do that, because I'd rather prefer people to remember you as you were in your prime. But by seeing you now throwing 60 or 50 odd averages like some of that, that's not for me. If that's for them, that's absolutely fine. I'll slag anybody off for doing that. But that is certainly not for me.
That's fair enough. Well, let's talk about a player that I don't think we've seen his prime yet, and that's your son Ryan. We saw him play at the UK Open a few months ago. You were there in Minehead for it. Was it a bit less stressful than the Grand Slam watching Ryan that weekend, because all the spotlight weren't on him?
No, it's all stressful. It's all stressful when your son, because you want your son to do. You actually want him to do better, and this goes for any father, and I think they'll understand it. That you want your son to do better than what you've ever done. And it would give you more pleasure to do it. That's not questionable. In the Grand Slam, that was great, and he actually played well against Dave Chisnell. But Dave Chisnell's just played out of his skin in them first 5 or 6 legs. Ryan sitting on a double and Chisnell taking out shots out all the place. And actually, Chisnell's been renowned for missing doubles. Down in Minehead, Ryan missed 3 darts double to beat young Irishman. I forget his name now, it's gone out of my head. But he had 3 darts and a double to actually win that match. He was 3-0 down, and he got to get back, and he had 3 darts to win it. He was disappointed, but when we went on the journey home, he was kind of like, he's pleased with the way he plays, because he's actually put it on the back burner a little bit. He's just had a son, or his wife has. He's a cracking little kid, and he's a great father, and he's got himself a very good job now, where he's having to put the hours in. So, he's got his life in order. They've got a house, so he needs to pay the bills and what have you. He will be going to Goose School. He's not playing the Challenge Tour in Germany, because he got out there and had to get on his laptop and do some work, which it weren't the right environment for him. But the Challenge Tour here he will play. But he's going to then, over Christmas and that, really practice to go into Q School. And then we'll take it step by step. But at the moment, he's not putting himself under any pressure. And he's playing some great darts. I know he turned up, I think it was 3 or 4 Wednesdays ago, at the Challenger Champions for the Essex County, and went on and won that for the 2nd year running. So, he's the County Challenger Champions champion. So that's that's hard to do in any county. So he's still got the ability. I believe he's got the ability. It's just having the right run at the right time, and getting focused. And I believe once his son gets a little bit older and he settles down in this job, then he'll be able to be more committed to getting back to his darts. But we'll just see what happens. I'm not pushing him on anything, because that doesn't work either. You can't have a father that's in your ear all the time, which I've never been. I've only ever encouraged him. But when I see him playing, he's playing well. That is very pleasing.
Glad to hear it, and we certainly wish him all the best. And lastly, you mentioned this your swan song over the next few months in the commentary box. We should probably ask you what your favourite moments have been in the commentary box over the years.
There's been a few. That was thrown at me. Sid Waddell, was a great person to work with. He was so eccentric, and he'd be jumping all over the place. Dave Lanning, he was brilliant, and John Gwynn. I know John Gwynn's not very well at the moment, so my family's love go with him at the moment. But, you know, there's been so many things when I first started. You know, I remember saying to Rory Hopkins, I'm no good at this, so I'm not going to bother. And he said, give it time, you know. And I've always been told by you know, them three people who were senior commentators, and especially Stuart Pike, who's a very good friend now. You know, when you're a pundit, don't try and be, you know, the commentator. Let them do all the background stuff, and you kind of say it as it is, and, you know, say about the play, what a player should do. You know, look at his throw, because there is players that have, you know, change their throw a little bit without realising, and it's causing a little bit of inconsistency. But, you know, they don't want to listen to me anymore, and certainly their managers are not interested. So it's been a learning curve, and it's been fun. You know, working with Dave Clark for as many years as I did, because I was the first one that really did all that. That was great with Clarkey. Sky, you know, Rory Hopkins, you know, he gave me the chance, and my email to him was a very thankful one. But saying it's time for me to hang it up and let other people come through. I just think it needs brightening up, and you know, I'm coming up 65, and a 65-year-old grey-haired old man, I don't think helps that show anymore. You know, I know I'm doing this World Series, and I'm doing that because, you know, I want to do it for the last year, and Matt Porter's asked me so. But then, you know, it is something for someone else. I do have to say who I think would be great doing it, or fronting the show, or doing this, whether it's listened to or not, it doesn't really matter to me now. You know, I've made up my mind, and when I look back, you know, it's, you know, Phil Taylor doing 2 night darters on the same night, the Premier League at Wembley, and then that Wembley, we had it cancelled that night because the electrics went out, you know, and seeing our staff come on as well, you know, Matt Porter, you know, when he first come in, you know, made loads of mistakes like everybody does, but now, you know, if you wanted a tournament on the moon, Matt Porter can organise it. There's no question about that, because he's got the right staff in place, and Dave Allen and Hayley Scott, you know, the two in from the beginning to help Matt out and get the PDC where it is. So it's been a great journey. It really has. And now I bought a lodge on a big lake up in Lincolnshire, so the wife and I will be there, and I can go fishing whenever I want. And we'll be going out to Spain, to be quite honest, a lot in the winter. Our knees. And so, yeah, it's. I think what happened, Alex, was, and I think a lot of people, is the pandemic and really kind of proved to me that, do you know what, it's time to finish the rest of your life off. How many years it's going to be, I don't know. I may live to 100, you don't know, but live it the way you want. And if you don't need to work and you can survive without working, then at my age, that's the right thing to do.
Well, Rod, it's a pleasure to catch up with you. We appreciate your time. Congratulations on a fantastic career that you've had in the game off the hockey since you packed up the darts, and wish you all the best with the retirement, and fingers crossed at one point over these last few events someone will miss the big number while you're in the commentary box. Okay, thanks Alex, appreciate it.
Thanks to Rod for joining us. Now let's look ahead to next week, and I do mean next week, not this upcoming week, because the Premier League playoffs will be on Monday in Berlin, kicking off a full week of PDC action with some Players' Championship events in the middle of the week, followed by the World Cup of Darts. But let's make our predictions for that Premier League. Who comes through those two semifinals and lifts the trophy?
Yeah, here we go. Before I get into my picks, just a shout out to George Dobson, who was the winner of our second last man standing competition. He has got a prize. It is on its way. We are organising that for you, so keep an eye out on the post. That will be on its way, and congratulations again to George. But yeah, onto the picks, and looking at the players that we've got for these playoffs, it is an interesting mix of players. You've got 3 former winners of the Premier League in there. You've got Michael Van Gerwen, who's chasing Phil Taylor's record of 6 Premier League titles. Michael currently on 5. And then the other 2 former winners, Johnny Clayton, the defending champion, and James Wade. They're looking to become only the 4th player to win 2 Premier League titles. So a bit of history there for them to join a list that has just Phil Taylor, Michael Van Gerwen and Gary Anderson. And then Joe Cullen looking to become the 3rd consecutive debutant to win the Premier League after Glenn Durrant and Johnny Clayton last year. So whoever comes through, I think there is going to be a story behind it. But going off my picks on how I see it playing out, the first semi-final, we've got Johnny Clayton against Joe Cullen. And looking at the head-to-head, Joe Cullen 9-6 up on Johnny, but as far as the Premier League, they've met 6 times this year. Johnny Clayton leads it 4-2, and it's an interesting one because Joe Cullen, from those 4 players, he's got to be the most rested, hasn't he? He didn't play the US Darts Masters. He won't be playing the event in Denmark this weekend, so he's going to be well rested, and whether that proves to be an advantage or not, we don't know, but it will be a few weeks since we've seen him in competitive action. And it was a really intriguing stat that we got from Christopher Kempf last week when he was the guest co-host, when he said that Joe Cullen's tournament average was the lowest for a player to get in the playoffs since, I think he said, Adrian Lewis 2008. So that's quite a stat, isn't it? But all the other results, they go out the window now, didn't they, for this Premier League? It doesn't matter if you finish first or fourth, whatever you average during the season, it all comes down to this one night. But I think for the first game, I'm going to go with the player that finished top, the defending champion. I will go with Johnny Clayton. I'm going to go 10-7 on that one. And then the second semi-final, I think this will probably be a little bit closer. I know that Michael had his way with James Wade pretty comfortably at the weekend in New York, an 8-3 win in their quarterfinal on Saturday. But I think James Wade will make a game of it. And I look at the Premier League meetings as well. I think it was pretty close, 3-2 in Michael's favour. But the 2 wins that James Wade had, both games he averaged 99. Michael, the 2 games that he lost to James, at an 87 average, a 103 average, and a 6-2 win for James in that lower average game, a 6-5 win for James in that higher average game. So that shows that James Wade, he can play to a consistent level, and he can beat whichever Michael van Gerwen turns up. And as we know, we do call him the new handicapper's nightmare. And the injury as well that we know with Michael, he is going to be having surgery after this night, whether it's 1 game or 2 games. But I do think he gets through this first game. I think it's going to be tight. I'm going to go 10-8 to Michael van Gerwen. And then just quickly, my final. It's a final which I think probably a lot of people are expecting, the top 2, Johnny Clayton and Michael van Gerwen. And they've met so many times over the last couple of years. I was looking there head-to-head since the start of 2021. It is 9-6 in Johnny Clayton's favour. He did beat Michael in the semi-finals on the way to winning the Premier League last year. And I think he's going to repeat it this time. I think he is going to become a back-to-back Premier League champion. I'm going to go with the Ferret to win this one and start that bid to retain the biggest title in darts, the weekly Dartscast Player of the Year. I'm going to go 11-9 for Johnny against Michael in the final.
Ooh. Well, if you go back last year, Johnny Clayton, he won the Masters to get in that last spot in the Premier League. He then, on the final day of the Premier League campaign, won a straight shootout against Dimitri Vandenberg to get into the playoffs. And from there, he beat the top seed Michael van Gerwen and then won in the final to become Premier League champion. This year, Joe Cullen won the Masters to get the final spot in the field. On the final day of the season, he won a straight shootout. Oh, I should have said, sorry. Let me go back. Johnny Clayton won a straight shootout last year against the reigning world match play champion to get the final spot. And on the last day of this year, Joe Cullen won a straight shootout against the reigning world match play champion to get the last spot in. And yes, okay, last year Johnny Clayton averaged nearly 100 in the league phase and Joe Cullen only averaged 92. But we haven't seen the best from Joe Cullen yet. We haven't seen anywhere near the best from Joe Cullen yet. And it's been enough. We are finally going to see Joe Cullen play his A game when it matters the most. And he's going to do exactly what Johnny Clayton did a year ago. And that is go from Masters champion to beating the world match play champion to get into the playoffs, to beating the top seed in the semifinals. I'm going Joe Cullen 10-8. In the second semifinal, Michael van Gerwen against James Wade. I'll do this one a little quicker since I spent so much time on that first semifinal. I'll go the opposite way. Why not do exact opposite of everything you say? You said Michael van Gerwen. I'll say James Wade to win this one. Wade has been such a crafty competitor this entire Premier League campaign, even though, of course, he had to miss a week because he was at hospital in Germany. Well, he's back in Germany now, but he's not in hospital. He's in the semifinals of the Premier League. And Wade knows how to lift his game. Van Gerwen has finally been lifting his game, but it's been not enough recently, losing 3 Premier League finals over the past couple months, as well as obviously the final in Madison Square Garden. But this time it'll be a semifinal that the former world number 1 loses as James Wade gets over the line in a last leg decider 10-9. And in the final, is Joe Cullen going to completely do what Johnny Clayton did last year? No. I'm going James Wade to win his second Premier League title and clinch tip of the year for Mac Elkin. I'm going to go James Wade to win it 11-7, averaging 109, just under 110, and beating Joe Cullen to the title. Anything else for this week?
Let us know your picks for the Premier League playoffs as well. Do get in touch. Let us know who you think is going to make the final, who's going to win the title. Are you going with me? Do you think it will be Johnny Clayton, or are you going to go with Burton and go for the outsider a bit more in James Wade? Let us know. And as always, we should say big thank you to our guests for joining us. Thanks to David, to Vladimir, to Rod. Appreciate their time. And thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you to our guest co-hosts for the last 2 weeks in my absence, to Hannah, to Christopher. Not sure what our plans are for next week, because there is so much darts going on through the PDC next week, with the playoffs, with the Pro Tour and with the World Cup, but we will try and bring you something. So do keep an eye out, as you would say, Burton. Do hang tight for that. And as I mentioned, lots of darts next week, so make sure you enjoy it. Enjoy the darts.
Yes, indeed. We'll have to figure out what we're going to do next week, if we do anything at all, because, well, there is so much to talk about, but so little time. So yes, you will have to hang tight for some stuff, but not for too much, because it's going to be a lot of enjoying the darts in the next week. But you'd still have to hang tight a few more days, just a few more days.